Hello, Lonnie West with LHZ preamps today, and today we're going to talk about three things. First, we're going to do our reveal and reveal which op amps were used in the blind audio comparison and which order they were. We'll discuss objective testing and subjective reactions a little bit, and then we'll do some subtractive testing to actually take a look at the audio samples and see how different they really are. So first things first, it's time to pick a card. Pick any card.
Here we go.
So I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time on the reveal. The first op amp in the series, the one that was labeled A, is the MC33162. Op amp B was the LF442CN, and op amp C was the 1464CN. Since we posted the video, we had a lot of comments, some on the YouTube page, but a lot of them via email, messages, and in the forums. And about, I would say, 40% of you picked B as being the LF442. So before you start, high-fiving yourself or jumping on the doghouse and taking a jig or whatever you do to celebrate, let me just ask you, did you hear a difference or did you think you heard a difference? That's not a snarky question. There's some thought behind that. There's a lot of factors that influence what we perceive. As we know, YouTube's audio compression puts its own artifacts on the audio, so it puts things that weren't there. How the sample prior ends before the new sample starts has a big influence on how you hear things. Audio is perceived in a temporal fashion, meaning we don't keep a long record in our memory of how things sound. So what we hear right now is compared to what we just immediately heard. The end result is we have a tendency to find patterns that match our expectations, particularly when the patterns are very subtle. It's easy to pick differences between things that are wildly different, but when they're very close, it becomes much harder and we start looking for things that match our expectations. This is why objective testing is important, and I've tried my best to be as objective as we can here. Most comparison videos that we find online are fairly subjective, which means that a person will play the same riff or part through different rigs, changing out something in there. But we don't really take into account the fact that the performance differs each time. Anybody that's been in a studio that tried to exactly multi-track a guitar track will know that you can multi-track, but those two waveforms are never exactly the same. There's always going to be timing differences, there's going to be performance differences, there's a delta in there. And every variable in the chain represents an amount of variance from a known position. So the challenge is when the amount of variance is bigger than the amount of variance that you're trying to measure, it's impossible to measure it. So if we were to use a unique performance each time we compare these op amps, the differences between the op amps is tiny, but the differences between the performance is huge in comparison. We really wouldn't be able to do an objective measurement. So what we've done is taken out pretty much all the variables that we could. We have the same sample is used to trigger each one of these recordings. It's set at the same levels. It's using the same preamp board. It's using the same DI with the same settings. It's even done in the same session at the same time of day, one after another, to make sure everything is identical as possible. The only thing that changed is the op amp. Since we've spent a lot of time weeding out the op amps that are wildly dissimilar, these are so close as to be indistinguishable, so the delta variance is very small. And here's where psychology and how our brains are wired comes into play. Our brains are hardwired to find patterns. If they can't find a pattern, they'll infer a pattern from recent experiences or context. For example, 6 or 7 years ago, there was a viral video going around with a sound sample that was, people were confused of whether it was Laurel or Yanny that was being said, which sounds like two completely different words. I'll play a sample so you can hear it.
Laurel.
Did you get that?
Laurel.
So what did you hear? Laurel or Yanny? There are a lot of variables that came into play of why people heard it differently. Or while the same person in the morning would hear Laurel and then in the afternoon hear Yanny. It depends on your hearing. It depends a lot on what you were just listening to, your listening environment, what you're actually listening to this on. And that's the same thing when it comes down to audio testing like this. So while your ears can only take you so far, when that delta is so small, you can't necessarily trust your ears to tell you the difference. So this is why we're going to do subtractive testing. Since we use the same sample for the input, we can subtract the output waveforms from each other to hear what the differences are between them. This is a great tool. It's like an audio microscope. It will reveal changes in volume, EQ, changes in the nonlinear response part of the curve, if there's a difference in compression, limiting, clipping, even in phase. Those will all become apparent in subtractive testing. The output will truly only be silent if the waveforms are exactly the same. So inside Studio One, we have our 3 tracks that we originally recorded. And what I'm going to do is now unmute one of the other tracks with our original LF442CN, and we're going to invert it. So we're subtracting one from the other to hear the difference. So I'll do this I'm going to use the MC33172. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to change the phase to 180 degrees out of phase. So with it not muted right now, the only track we're listening to, we're going to hear our original LF442CN. Now we're going to unmute this one. This one is 180 degrees out of phase, so where it's peaked on the one track, it'll be negative on the other track. They should cancel each other out. If we hear anything, that's the differences between the 2 op amps. So let's play that. No difference at all. I'll do it again, and what you want to watch is you'll see the 2 channels here. Here's the final output meter. We're going to look to see if there's any differences there. Let's play that again. No difference. Let's do the same thing with the 1464. We'll go into that one, invert the audio. So now we're playing this one, and we're going to be playing that one together, and they should be subtracting each other. So again, let's listen. No difference. All right, so let's do the same thing with another section here, and we'll go to the hard picking section. Again, we'll compare the first 2 and see if we hear a difference. No difference at all. So how do we know subtractive testing is actually working and I'm not just muting the tracks? Well, we can show this by putting an insert in here, and I'll add in what Studio One calls the fat channel, and it's a combination effect that gives us compressor, equalizer, limiters. So let's say, for example, there is a difference in the dynamics of track 1. So we'll make it act like a limiter. We'll just make it immediately, so very little attack, very little release. Bring the threshold down to something. I don't know where this will be, so let's go ahead and play this. So what's going to happen is at any point when this limiter or compressor starts having effect, that's where we should start hearing a difference. So let's play that. So you hear a difference. If I take the ratio back, so now it's just like a 3-to-1, you'll still hear a difference because there's a difference in the 2 signals. Likewise, I'll turn the compressor off. Likewise, if there's a change in the EQ response, like let's say it's got more bass or more treble. So let's go into the equalizer and we'll just boost it up a little bit at the 1K and see if we hear a difference now. So even if there's a difference in volume, so let's say we just knock this one down half a dB, minus 0.5. So now it's just a half a dB lower in volume. Do we hear the difference if we do subtractive testing? Yeah, we do. So I hope this settles some concerns. These three op amps are sonically indistinguishable, particularly when you look at it from subtractive testing. There is no difference between them, which means there's no EQ difference. There's no difference when we hit that nonlinear region, so there's no difference in the feel. They're really doing exactly the same thing. So when you listen to the samples and then ask yourself, did I hear a difference or did I think I hear a difference? Again, that's the difference between subjective and objective testing. By doing the subtractive testing, we're truly showing you there is no difference between those waveforms. So what you heard or thought you heard is an artifact of all those other things that were in that chain that can add variance, like YouTube compression. Absolutely adds a difference to the audio that may very well be perceived. The order that they were played, coming off of the tail of one into the beginning of another will change your perception of how that one sound. So going forward, where are we? We have already transitioned into different chips. HasLabs has been using the MC33172 for a few years now. We are currently using the 1464 CN. This will transition into the same one that the HasLabs using, which is the MC33172. The difference really is the form factor. The 1464 is a JFET-based op-amp, just like the LF442 was. And it's also in a DIP, dual inline package, just like the original LF442 was. So we can use those on our existing boards without any changes. So that's an easy solution right now, even though those chips are becoming hard to find because manufacturers are really not making that package style anymore. They're all moving over to surface mount, which is why we, like every other preamp manufacturer and HasLabs, is moving over to the small surface mount. So we will be phasing those in over the next few weeks as we use up stock of the 1464s and get new boards in from our PC board manufacturer that are designed for the surface mount. We will be transitioning over to the MC33172 chips. And again, from an end perspective, no difference in the sound, the feel, how it works, exactly the same. HasLabs themselves are using the same chips, so there's really not a difference there. So I hope that addresses some concerns that some of us fans of the LF442 have. I count myself in there as well. I was very invested in that chip as being an integral part of the sound. And while it is, it's really attributes of the chip that really made it work that way. And it wasn't the only one that could do it. But there are, we had to be careful as far as matching ones that performed in the same manner. And I think we did a good job with that. So that's all I have for today. Cheers, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.